All right. I'd like to call this meeting to order, a regular meeting of Committee of the Whole on Monday, September 30th at 6:30 PM in the Germantown Village Hall boardroom, and also can be accessed via WebEx. This meeting has been given public notice in accordance with sections 19.83 and 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes in such form that will apprise the general public and news media of subject matter that is intended for consideration and action. Roll call shows all village members present except for Trustee Hudson, who is excused, and Trustee Pieper, who is joining us via WebEx. At this time, I'll ask for approval of minutes from the October 25th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting.
Make a motion to approve as presented.
Motion made. Need a second?
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to approve? No discussion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
I'm going to abstain because I wasn't here last year.
I'm sorry?
I'm going to abstain. I wasn't here last year.
Okay. One abstains. All right, then takes us to the next item, which is budget review, starting with item A, review of departmental budgets. But before we start with item 1, we'll turn the meeting over to our budget director, Matthew Selding, and give us any overview or information that you'd like to.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to start by just providing a very brief overview of the 2025 recommended budget. And that really starts with the general fund and how that affects the tax levy. As you can see on your screen, we're projecting expenses to increase by about 8.6% or 1.7 million. Of that 1.7 million, about 1.45 million is the result of the referendum and the additional public safety personnel that were approved via the referendum, 10 firefighters/EMS personnel, and 4 additional patrol officers. As you'll notice, revenues outside of tax levy are projected to decrease slightly, about $40,000 compared to the 2024 recommended budget. This is largely driven by a projection of decreased development throughout the village, and so less building permit revenue and those types of things, which has been a large driver of revenues over the last 5 years for sure. This slide should look familiar. This was in the recommended budget presentation, comparing the 2024 bill, average bill to the 2025 projected bill. We're looking at an average increase of about $251. More than half of that is due to the referendum, about $167, and $84 being a result of net new construction in 2025, as well as an increase in the debt service levy, for a total of $84. With that, I was going to move directly to the library, unless anybody had any questions, just in general about the budget.
Any questions on the overview? Trustee Jan Miller.
Could you go back to the last slide? Yeah. Projected impact on residents' tax bill. So you have, is this property tax bill are you talking about?
Correct. The village's portion of the tax bill.
The villages?
Correct.
Okay, not the residents.
Well, this is the village's portion of the residents' tax bill.
So what would the whole tax bill average be?
That I don't know. I don't know that until other taxing jurisdictions have adopted their levy. I'm focused just on the village's portion. We have no control outside of the village's portion.
You don't have that? No.
No, I won't have them until the county, school district, and MATC adopt their budgets and their levies.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Kaminsky.
Question, Matthew. Can we also perhaps take this slide for maybe our next meeting and project it as an average home is what, valued at 300,000 or whatever? Is
Yeah.
that what this average, because I don't know what this tax bill actually reflects. I know in the past we'd say the home that's valued at $325,000.
Yep.
Could anticipate this, something
So
like that.
this was based off last year's, and the average was $350,000. In the village of Germantown.
Okay, so this is a $350,000 home.
Correct.
Yeah, I would just add that on there.
Correct. And what I'm planning
Yeah.
on doing is once all of the new assessments are sent to the state,
Yeah.
I can do a mill rate,
Okay.
which I
Yep,
can
whatever.
apply. I didn't want to provide a mill rate just
No,
because those
that's
assessed
fine.
values haven't been provided yet.
We're used to seeing that and
Yep,
that's just
yep.
easier to understand.
And once I have that, those numbers from the state, I'll be sure to provide them.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Trustee Cutts?
I just am wondering why, when you're comparing the percentage and the change, you use the 2024 original instead of the revised to compare to 2025?
Mostly because the revised is based on outside factors that weren't originally approved by the board. So if you look at the library board, they received a bunch of donations this year. And so they revised their budget to increase their expenses based on that revenue donation. I don't want to then project that we're going to get that revenue donation in 2025 and then increase both the revenues and expenses. So the change is really based on the original budget. Oftentimes throughout the year, fire, PD, they get these grants throughout the year. And so I don't want to, assume we're going to get those year over year. So we base it off the original budget.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, anything else? We go to the library.
So one of the things I wanted to do for the 2025 budget is look at where the tax dollars are supporting the different departments. And so I titled that levy support. So you take that by, looking at how many revenues they bring in outside of taxes and comparing that to the expenses, and what's remaining is what is supported by the tax levy. So the 2025 budget has an increased tax levy for the library of about $63,000. This is a result of increased expenses, mostly in the salaries and benefits lines, and a slight decrease in projected revenues from the county. Looking at the revenues, the intergovernmental revenues are projected to decrease by about $12,000. This is based on information that the library receives from the county and what they're projecting their county aid to be in the given year. Last year is about $350,000. This year they're expecting it to be just under $340,000. On the expense side, you'll see a rather large increase in salaries and benefits. This is mostly due to putting back part-time salaries and wages to increase the library staffing hours. Last year, we decreased the library budget by about $50,000 over their 23 adopted budget, about $100,000 less than what they'd requested. So in the 2025 recommended budget, we try to put a portion of that back to allow the library to remain open longer based on their traditional hours. As a result, that increased about salaries $25,000 and also drove up benefits slightly. The remaining increase in salaries and wages is due to increases for staff as well as late in 2024, some personnel over there got raises adopted by the library board, and so we're building that into the 2025 budget. Again, the highlights for the library budget is increased part-time salary and wages by about $25,000. This will help restore the library operating hours to 59 hours a week compared to the 52 hours that they were operating from in 2024. If you look at the details comparing the library regular salaries and wages to the part-time salaries and wages, you'll see a rather large shift. This is just a budgeting change. Originally, a part-time or a full-time member was being budgeted in the part-time line, so we just adjusted that in 2025 to better reflect the hours worked. And here's a summary of the library positions. I only included the full-time positions just because the library has a variety of part-time positions and different titles. And I didn't want to cipher through all that and confuse everybody with the total number of positions. So I listed just the full-time positions and their pay grades. And with that, I'll take any questions for the library budget.
I had a couple questions.
Trustee Jan Miller?
Matt, can you tell us how many part-time employees there are now that you shifted one part-time to full-time?
I don't have the number of part-time. I believe the library director is here and maybe she has that. The way I budgeted is just a total dollar amount, and then I allow the library and the library board to divvy up the number of positions as they see fit. I don't limit it to, we have 10 part-time positions where maybe they could have 15, but they work less hours than something like that. So I just budget the raw dollar amount. I don't list the actual number of part-time employees because that can vary day to day in how the library board operates. But the library director might have a better number than I would.
Thank you.
Currently we have about, is it on? Okay. Currently we have roughly 20 part-time positions.
Okay.
And as Matthew said, those can range, between 6 hours a week to 29 hours a week. So, big variety. And, traditionally we do budget based on hours of need at our desks and for tasks. So that can vary too. Sometimes just what works best is splitting up positions or so they're not consistent
Okay.
year to year even. So
And then you took, if I understand this correctly, you moved a part-time to a full-time position?
we didn't change anything with that position, but the way it was coded in Tyler Munis was when we made that changeover, we put it was our circulation manager. She was originally listed as part-time and we moved her over to full-time. Her hours and salary remained the same. It was just a change in how we defined that in the system.
Okay. So then she's the circulation manager. Okay.
Yep.
And what, I was looking at all the line items. What happened to the computer services? It seems like it's, it's reduced by 26%. Is that on purpose?
We had reduced that with the 2024 budget. And then it stayed consistent between 2024 to 2025.
What does that consist of?
Oh, computer services?
Yeah.
That is our printing, copying, faxing lease. That's a big portion of it. Any computer equipment that we purchase, anything related to technology equipment that we purchase. It covers some technology services as well, like our door counter, our programming software, various subscriptions we have to run all of our services.
Okay. Thanks.
Mhm.
And then I noticed you have professional development on here, and I was wondering if you had anyone attending Leadership Germantown this year.
We do not have anybody this year.
But do you have some programs that you'd like to attend?
We do. We have 2 annual Wisconsin library conferences that I go to every year, and I have a variety of staff that go to those. And then there are a variety of other like one-day seminars, trainings that staff go to, as well as our Wisconsin Library Association memberships.
And then there's another line, Tricia, that says marketing and promotion. And you guys do a great job of that, but since 2023, it's about half that you're recommending for a budget, which would be close to what you had, I think, in 2024.
Yes.
So are you doing more in-house, or what are we talking?
We switched some of ours to in-house. We cut down on our with the budget cuts last year, we cut down on for this year, I should say, we cut down on our number of types of brochures. So we streamlined it into one brochure for all ages, and we're going to keep doing that this year. And most of the 5,000 of marketing that we cut was in community engagement. So doing events at community festivals. We still do some of them, but we've cut down on the number of them and cut down on what we're able to provide at those events.
Is that due to budget constraints
Yes.
only? Okay.
And staff hours, which in a sense was budget cuts too.
That was cut too.
Yep.
Right. So if you had to guess, how many hours have you had to cut since they cut in from 23 to 24?
Hours for community engagement?
Yes.
Huh.
Well, it's about half, right?
Well, half the budget. I don't have an answer for that. I can get that for you if you would like.
Sure. Did you have more than 20 part-time employees in the 2023 budget?
I don't know.
Okay.
I believe I know one part-time position was not filled. That was part of the budget cuts in 2024.
Okay.
So we were down one, but it's really hard to say number-wise because we have a number of high school employees that really vary year to year. So it might be more or less employees. We have some seasonal employees, so it gets hard to compare numbers year to year.
Understood. So, the, I just wanted to be clear about the library hours. You're going from 52 to 59, and 59 was the original amount of hours that you were open for a long time.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Yep, that was our 2023 hours from, I'm not sure when those started, as long as I can remember.
Sure, sure. And so we're just getting back to the amount of hours, but it looks like we're still, it still looks to me like we're a little shy on the budget if you wanted to do more community engagement. So from and I'm measuring it from 2023
Mhm.
to the 2025 recommended budget.
Yeah, we went back to we stayed at 2024 numbers, which were cut in library books, library audiovisual, computer services, and marketing. And programming, sorry, those 5.
Audio, marketing, programming,
Yep.
books.
Books, audiovisual, computer services, programming, and marketing.
Okay. So you're basically not running on all cylinders. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah, reduce services.
Okay, but you're not, you don't have as many programs as you had.
We did cut our programming about 10%.
And it looks like the circulation was up this year over last.
It's slightly down. It's
What is
about,
slightly down?
it's about 2% down from last year right now.
And what do you think attributes to that?
I believe it's a combination of hour cuts, material cuts, and program cuts.
Okay. So what one of the things that we had at one of our last meetings was the opportunity to get the federal grant. And I was wondering if you had heard whether, because they said sometime before October 1st.
We have not heard yet. We are supposed to hear tomorrow.
Okay. So the federal grant would change the complexion of your trajectory for the next 2 years if it's awarded at 4.25 million.
That would be primarily in our capital expense line.
Building only. It's for building only. It wouldn't be for
Mhm.
supplemental or for wages or programming. It would be part of a build out only.
So why wouldn't it, would you need more people to assist you with this task?
It would be helpful to have more people, yes.
So I'd like to make a motion. Can I do that? Are we there?
Yes? Yes?
I'd like to make a motion to postpone finalizing this until we get the word on the grant, the library grant, federal grant opportunity, which will come tomorrow. And I'm wondering if we could put this, even though this is the first budget we're going through, there may be some other budgets that we could get $20,000 for another part-time person or two.
I just want to clarify too, we should hear by tomorrow. I don't have that guarantee, so.
Right.
just-
Go ahead.
So my motion is to postpone this budget until the next week budget meeting on the 8th, I believe, October 8th.
If I could just clarify some process things. We will be handling the capital budget at a future meeting. I believe that will be on the, is that the 15th? The 15th. And also on the 15th is an opportunity for any wrap-up items that the board wants to address. So we have 3 meetings where we go through most of the departmental budgets. Then on the 4th meeting, there will be a few of the kind of the non-departmental budgets. And then it's an opportunity for any wrap-up items that the board would like to look at from any of the departments.
And nothing's finalized until it goes through public hearing and is voted on by the village board. So there's opportunity all the way up until the meeting of the public hearing to make any additional motions to change any part of this budget as we go forward. So, there's opportunity. I understand what you're asking, but there is that opportunity all the way up to the November meeting. But right now we have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? More time. Do I have a second to the motion?
I'll second for discussion.
All right. Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Trustee Cutts.
I'm just seconding so we can discuss.
Okay.
We're going to, I don't feel that we need to, I guess, go into this anymore till we hear on the grant, and we haven't addressed the capital yet, but
Okay.
Mhm.
Further discussion on the motion.
If I could just add,
Oh, go ahead, Matt.
if I could just add, what I will be doing throughout these meetings is taking notes. And if there's, if I get the sense or sentiment that there's going to be additional discussion on something, I will plan on having that on the last committee of the whole meeting. So over here I have, library discussion, capital projects on 10-15 committee of the whole.
Okay.
Just as I get a sense of the discussions and, outstanding topics, I plan on having those on the committee of the whole, whether the board wants to have an official vote or just say, yes, we'll probably talk about this again in the future. It's up to the decision of the board.
Okay. Further discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Aye. Motion fails. Back to other questions. Trustee Pieper has her hand up. Trustee Pieper.
Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I think we have a technical issue on our end. Trustee Pieper did email me. I'll see if I can figure out what's going on with that, if we can come back to it.
All right, other questions, comments? Trustee Bone?
Retirement up by 43%. It's happening there.
Excuse me.
That's line item. That would be line item 521100. Library state retirement increase of 43.44%.
Yep, that is a combination. That's a combination of things. One, the state did increase the contribution from all municipalities compared to 2024. It went up, I believe, 0.5%. So the village has an additional 0.5% to contribute, as well as the employee. In addition, we did increase part-time salaries and wages, which had a major effect. But the biggest effect is just looking back at some of the actuals and adjusting. I've probably been a little low on the WRS contribution from the village's side, so just making a correcting increase there. If you look at 2023 and 2024 actual year-to-date, I just wanted to be a little more conservative in where the number is going to come out to be. 39,000 might be a smidge high, but just given where it's been in the last couple of years, I wanted to bump that up to make sure we were covered on that end.
Trustee Jan Miller.
And then, Matt, I'd like to make sure that we bring it up for discussion, library again on 10:15,
Yep,
as you suggested.
Yep, I have that listed in my notes to make sure that's on the agenda, as well as we'll probably have a generic item as well saying, outstanding topics that can be discussed.
Okay. And I didn't, maybe I'm looking in the wrong place, but on this general fund expenses for the library, it's not an expense, it's a fund. Where is the new library Washington County offset fund? What line item is that?
That is in a separate fund, and that will be on the committee of the whole meeting for October 15th, when we plan on doing all the special revenue funds. It has its own fund. If you recall, the General Government and Finance Committee created a new fund for those dollars as they're expecting to receive contributions in the future from the county.
Right.
So that will have its own budget and its own line item.
Is it in our book?
No, I haven't sent out the documents for the special revenue funds yet, but it will be in there.
Okay. Thank you.
Matt, you have it listed under the intergovernment revenue funds. On like the second big page, it's in there.
Those are the annual county dollars that the library receives. They'll receive separate capital donations that are designated for capital improvements to the library. And in a few months ago, the General Government and Finance Committee created a separate fund. They expect to get, I don't know, $30,000 a year.
Yes. It can change, so
Just
Yeah,
hang
I
on
know.
a second.
30,000 a year.
Yeah, but that's the fund you're asking about, Jan, right? The offset fund?
Mhm.
Oh, no, okay.
All right, Trustee Peeper.
I just had a question about the library board. So obviously the salaries and wages that went up because you were extending the library hours. What are the hours that are being added from this year to next year?
So you're looking what hours we're going to in 2025?
Mhm.
Proposing, okay. Right now, we're at
I think you
month.
said there was 7 hours or 9 hours additional, 52 to 59.
Yep, it'll be 7 additional hours, 52 hours to 59 hours.
So where are those hours being added to the normal library schedule?
Right now, we're open Monday through Thursday, 9:30 to 7:30. We are proposing to go to 9 to 8. Friday, we have 9:30 to 5, and we're proposing going 9 to 5. And Saturday, we're proposing 9:30 to 3, or we're at 9 to 3, sorry, and we're proposing going to 9 to 4.
So you're adding about an extra hour every day that you're open, because you're not open Sundays, right?
Go
Uh,
back to where you were.
Yeah, we're going back to where we were. So yeah, it adds about an extra hour.
Okay. So I don't know, I know you have a lot of data and you look at every aspect of the library and you do a very, very good job at managing the library. Would you be able to tell us the use of the library in 2023 like the number of checkouts, you know, the number of people coming to the library during that extra hour that you
I
minimize?
I can try to run those numbers. Some of our data is a little bit tricky because they're on like hour increments. But I can put a chart together and get you as much information as I can.
Okay, yeah, it would just be interesting to see.
Sure.
Before we cut those hours to the
Mhm.
library, how much use they got?
Yep.
If there was a lot of people coming there, you know, later at night or
Mhm.
during that extended hour? If you're catching my drift,
Yep.
if it was being utilized a lot by keeping the library open later.
Yep. I can get
And
those for you.
my other question was about the part-time employees, their pay grade.
Yep.
Are you able to, I know it fluctuates and it goes up and down massively, but would you be able to pinpoint where the increase in the salaries and wages came from? Was it only increasing the wages of full-time staff? Was it increasing the wages of some part-time staff? Was it adding additional part-time staff?
Sure. It is primarily increasing hours of existing part-time staff. So full-time staff members did not receive any cuts in 2024. So primarily, what we're doing to bring back the hours would be giving all of our part-time staff, it's an average of about 2 to 3 hours a week for each of our part-time staff. A lot of it depends on schedules and when they're hired to work and what their duties are, but average of about 2 to 3 hours per part-time staff member. And that's not adding any additional staff, just increasing our current part-time staff.
And then the increase in the life insurance, was that again part of, like, you had no control over it, you had to pay it to, you know, the state agreed on it? I know that was the case for the retirement. Was that also the case for the whole life insurance?
I can address that slightly. Yes, so the life insurance is, based off a life table. So as employees get older and as their salaries change, those increases get built into the budget. There's small increases throughout the year, but it can really vary depending on birthdays and then annual salary wages. So for many departments, they go up year over year just based on the fact that salaries tend to go up, and barring some tragedy, ages go up as well.
Okay. And this question's for you, Matt. Then trying to find the library's revenue, and I only found 2 line items on the first page. So did the library's revenue increase, decrease,
It is
2023 to 2024?
it increased 2023 to 2024, but is projected to decrease in 2025.
And that's due to,
They're projecting less county aid, and the library director can go more into that calculation than I can. But the sum of it is they're projecting less aid from the county.
So, and that number is primarily based on a cost per circ reimbursement for non-libraried circulations, which is items checked out for residents in Washington County that do not live in a library municipality. Primarily, we see that from Richfield and Village and Town of Jackson. It is going down. Our circulation numbers went up, but because our cost per circ was lower than the overall went down. So there's a lot of factors
Okay.
that go into that.
so you do agree with that projection that the revenue will be going down in 2025?
Yes, we base those numbers off of our 2023 annual report, so we do have all of those numbers. I believe about a year or two ago, we didn't have those numbers set, but the county has changed the way they allocate money, and they're able to give us estimates so that we're not behind. So that's helped a lot on knowing exactly what we're going to get from the county every year.
Okay. And then, my last question, hang on, sorry, I gotta mute myself on my computer. The last question was the library insurance and bonds. But that increased, not much, but a little bit. How much does that fluctuate?
That is based on all of the insurance throughout the village, workers' comp insurance, property insurance, and there's some other insurances in there. We get estimates from MPIC and CIVMIC, who are our insurance carriers there. So what I do is I take, the total throughout the village, and then it gets allocated out across departments based on a percent of overall budget. And so in 2025, as you'll see,
Is there a reason why you do it based upon budget and not based upon actual number of employees of the village in each department?
No, I guess there isn't a reason. I guess one of the reasons is there's just other things included besides workers' comp. And so I was following the practice of the old finance director of allocating it based on budget. That doesn't mean that's necessarily the way we have to do it. I would say, however, that it all comes out of the general fund, so the overall dollar amount and how it affects the general fund wouldn't change. It would just show up differently on any given department. But no, it certainly could be based on total number of employees or things like that.
I would just be curious to see what the numbers look like if it was based on actual number of employees and not based on the budget.
Yep.
In the village, just because in my mind, workman's comp claims would be very minimal in a library, in my mind. I could be wrong. Maybe books fall on people. I don't know. But
Once in a while we get one, but
way less than, for instance, somebody working for Department of Public Works.
No, and that is certainly true on the workers' comp side, where the insurance for library employees is significantly less than for public works employees or public safety employees, where some of the other things come in is property insurance, things like that. But I can certainly take a look and see how it would look if it was based on number of employees. I do know that the police and fire would probably see a rather dramatic increase, just because they tend to have the most, I'm gonna say, expensive workers' comp insurance claims and dollar amounts.
Yeah, so if you wouldn't mind doing that, Matt.
Yep.
I'd appreciate it, just to see what the numbers actually come out looking like.
Yeah.
To see if it would really skew it across the board in departments, or if it would make more sense to do it that way.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, I'd be interested in seeing those numbers.
Okay, I can certainly provide that.
I don't know, I'm a numbers person.
Yep, I'd be happy to provide that.
Okay,
That's all I had.
all right, thank you. Trustee Warren?
So if I understand one of the requests of trustee Pieper, she wanted to see what the additional, or I guess the additional people that come during the new hours that you're going to get back to. I'd be interested in seeing that also, what that impact is. Basically going back to 2023 and then see what your reduced budget last year, how that was impacted, how that changed the use of the library.
sure,
Thank you.
I can get that for you.
Other questions, comments
I'm just testing to see
for library?
if this is working now.
No? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is Police Department. Matthew?
Yep. Much like the library, I wanted to display the levy support for the police department. And if you take a look at that bottom number there, the 2025 recommended budget has a levy support of about $6.7 million, which is roughly half of our total levy within the village of Germantown. So when folks are wondering, where their tax dollars going, at least on the village side, about half is going to support the police department. We see a rather increase in the levy support, largely driven by the referendum and the additional 4 patrol officers within the village of Germantown. The revenue side, it looks like a rather large increase. It's not as large as it looks, just given that about 150 of that was aid from the county as we transition dispatch from the village of Germantown to Washington County. And then a small portion of that is there's a slight decrease in expected revenues from court penalties. Just looking at the 5-year average, that decreased by about $9,000 to where we had budgeted it in 2024. And you can take a look at that here, where we decreased intergovernmental revenues by $150,000, which is what Washington County had obligated to give the village during our dispatch transition. And then the fines and forfeitures decreased by about $9,000, mostly driven by a decrease in court penalties. Just taking a look at the 5-year average, it came out to about $155,000 over the last 5 years. So I wanted to better reflect the revenues we can expect to receive. On the expense side, the salaries and benefits are largely driven by the additional 4 officers. And you can see those reflected there on the increases. On the operating supplies and expenses side, those are mostly due to increases in uniform allowance, some gasoline and oil expenditures, and vehicle maintenance. And here you can kind of see the breakdown of the major changes in the police department budget. You can see it's largely driven by the 4 patrol officers for about $418,000 towards those additional positions. Based on the new positions within the police department and looking kind of where they're tracking for 2024, we did decrease overtime by about $30,000, just based on the way that the police department is currently tracking and with the additional 4 officers and how they can better cover those shifts without relying on overtime. Here you can see the multiple positions within the police department and the number of FTEs associated with those positions. And with that, I will take any questions on the police department budget.
Trustee Baum, can you go back to that overtime number? Decrease in overtime of $30,000, that is for 2025?
Correct.
What was our total overtime in 2023, 2024?
Let me take a look here.
Is there a line item for that? Overtime is PD overtime,
One of them has.
excuse me. 51,1600 PD overtime. It's only at $10,000.
There should be multiple overtime lines based on the division within. I'm going to pull up the overtime report that's provided to the Public Safety Committee, which I can give the total dollar amount.
That's what I got here is 511,600. You guys, the total number, $30,000. My question is if we were bringing on all these police officers, the intent was to get rid of all the overtime. I thought we were in the neighborhood of $200,000 in overtime for the police department at one point. Should I not see that number being reduced throughout here, or is it in one spot?
So it's mostly being reduced in the patrol officers overtime with the additional patrol officers. The total, I actually don't have 23 in front of me. The year-to-date overtime for the police department is about $104,000, which is tracking significantly better than what we had budgeted for.
Say that again?
The total overtime paid out for 2024 year-to-date is $104,000. That probably is not what's reflected in that budget, just based on the timing of when those documents were generated and the additional payrolls sent to them.
Yeah, so if I look at the police patrol page, 51,1600 again. Actual for 2023 was $224,000. We budgeted $220,000. We revised it to 220. Actual spent is $40,000. And you're recommending 190 in overtime for, I thought we were supposed to get rid of this overtime by bringing on these additional police officers.
If I may, just interject here, and we also have Chief Snow is on WebEx and Captain Martin is here as well. They may want to expand on this, but there will be some types of overtime or some uses of overtime should go down with the new officers, and in particular, with a smaller shift of 4 officers per shift, the police department had to, if someone was out sick or out on injury, they would have to fill those slots on using overtime. With the additional officers that were added in 2024 and now in 2025, and more officers on shift, there should be a reduction in that type of overtime, because with more officers on shift, they can feel comfortable if one officer is out, not necessarily filling that with overtime. But there's also other types of overtime that where we won't see a decrease. For example, if an officer has to transport an individual for a mental health hold, and they take that person and they may end up waiting for hours for that person to get checked in before they're released that person is released out of custody. So there's other examples, but that's the one off the top of my head. So there should be some reduction in overtime, but overtime won't entirely go away.
So what number should I expect in, I guess maybe I wait till the public safety next meeting to see if they give me a new number there, but I'm not finding the savings that I was expecting by bringing on these new officers. Am I missing it somewhere, or am I not going to get it?
I think it's a good thing to continue to monitor in the Public Safety Committee, and to continue to look at, and actually I see Chief Snow's hand is going up on WebEx here. He wants to jump in, and I would be more than happy to let him. But I think, but it's difficult to predict what the exact number is going to be, because it is a mix of different kinds of overtime that the officers use. So I'm hoping that we're not having the same WebEx issue with Chief Snow, and that we're able to hear him. If he speaks otherwise, I'll give him a call and conference him in on the phone.
Steve, if that's the case, you can hang up on me and put him on speakerphone.
And since we're not hearing Chief Snow, I'm guessing he's having that issue, and I will.
Steve, are you?
All right, go
are you
ahead
able to
and
hear me?
hang up on me, but then if you could please call me back, I have some questions as well.
I think I can conference him in, so I don't think I need to hang up on you, Trustee Pieper.
Okay.
Is anybody able to hear me? I had not tried to speak at all yet.
Doesn't look like.
Welcome to Verizon Wireless. The number you dialed has been.
No, it doesn't look like the call is going through. But I think I hung up on both of them.
May I ask a quick question while we're waiting?
Can you guys hear
Sure,
me?
Trustee Chan
Yeah.
Miller.
Matt, what the 104,000 that you're talking about in overtime, through what date this year? Is that September or?
That would have been through the last payroll, which would have been last Tuesday.
So if you took 104 and you divided by 12. be
I can do that math real quick. 104
Or 9, yeah.
9 times 12.
By 9.
I didn't want to turn my phone down.
Hello. Hello.
4.
Hey, hi, Chief. This is Steve. We've got you on speakerphone here.
I just wanted to point out also with the referendum that one of those positions, remember, was in part when we talked to the. This is about the additional officers. We talked about increasing our staffing levels by at least one on second shift. I'm trying to mute myself here because I'm getting some feedback. So although that, we're going to certainly see a reduction in overtime overall, there still will be some overtime that will result in that additional staffing.
Hoping I'm coming over okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
And you would have seen that this year, we are doing overtime based on getting those positions filled. But, there certainly is not an elimination of time. And right now, our numbers are tracking less than in 2023. But, still more than what we had in years past.
Chief, can you mute your computer in the back? Otherwise, we're kind of getting a double feed.
Is that any better?
Yes. Yes, much better. Thank you. Trustee Baum, anything?
No, I gotta dig into it more. I think I'll wait for the next, public safety meeting to dig into it further.
Yeah, and if I could just add, so there's really two aspects to overtime. There's the overtime that's paid out, and then there's the OT comp time that can either be used for vacation or at the end of the year, if there's a comp balance that gets paid out. So if you combine those two numbers, the police department's on pace for $218,000 this year, and we budgeted 220. The OT paid out year to date is 104,000. The kind of the comp time that will likely be paid out at the end of the year is up to 60,000.
And how does that compare to last year? And when did we get all the officers on? Did they just come on last week or have they been on for 6 months?
I think the question is, has the police department filled all positions that were available?
Yeah.
Mike?
The police department has not filled those positions yet. We just started another hiring process where we will have 2 positions to fill for this year from that additional 4 that we were given in the 2024 budget. And we still have, I've not touched the 4 officers for 2025 yet.
So 6 positions still available?
That is correct.
So no.
Okay. Yeah, then we're not saving anything yet.
Right.
And if I could just answer your question, in 2023, the total OT for OT paid and total comp was $330,000. And this year we're on pace for 218.
That's with the same amount of people.
They would have two additional people this year because we had in the 24 budget they had 4 additional officers.
So out of the 4 available, 2 were filled, and then they were granted 4 more through the referendum, so they have 6 left.
So I guess, Trustee Baum, to answer your question, could overtime be reduced? It probably could, but I try to take a more conservative approach and just decrease to $30,000.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna see the reduction until all the officers are hired and we're running full staff.
Correct.
Because that, I understand all the stuff we've been dealing with in the background. Until the staff is full, we're still gonna have those issues. So, thank you.
Trustee Chan Miller?
So, but you're saying that 2023 overtime was 330 and this year you're tracking at 218.
Correct.
So that is a reduction.
Correct. I think the police department has done a good job managing their overtime. It's certainly on a much better track than it was last year. We're on track to beat budget by $2,000 in 2024 for overtime.
So I think me looking at it, 190 is highly achievable if they get everybody in. Does that include the comp, OT and plus comp?
Correct. That's total OT, including any comp.
Okay, can I ask a question? Because you have PD overtime and PT overtime on two different pages. And I know one's administration and one's a patrol, but you're using the same code number, 511600.
Yep, it has the same object. They're tied to different departments. So all of the overtime objects throughout the village should end in 511600.
Oh, so it's the code that's to the far left that changes?
Correct. You
Okay,
can think of that as the department or division.
okay, thanks for qualifying that. Then I had another question, because what you did was then in your, so you basically divided administration in these two pages from the patrol.
Yep. So within the police department, I believe there's 3 or 4 divisions. We tried to do administration, which typically is the chiefs, the captains,
Yep.
and some of the other higher officials, as well as some of the admin staff. We tried to limit patrol to just the patrol officers, detectives to, the detective division. And there is a dispatch division there that will likely show zeros across the board there.
And where was the, excuse me, where was the dispatch? What line? Oh, it's on its own.
Yep. And the only line that's going to show up there is the salaries.
Okay. So do we, so it's, okay. So it says, changes 366,000, that I'm on the right page, correct?
Correct.
So did we get our 300,000 to cover that from the county?
So we're only getting $150,000 from the county. And yes, we're working with the county. How we have it set up is any overtime accrued for dispatchers, we are billing the county for that time, as well as any additional dispatch staff that we have fill in either on a part-time or as needed basis. We track those hours and bill the county for those hours.
So where are you showing that? Is that going to be in the?
There should be an intergovernmental revenue.
Okay, integral. And
And I should have noted probably in my PowerPoint here that 4 of the dispatchers are being converted into admin staff for the police department. So that's why you do see a larger increase in administration to account for that additional staff that they will have there.
are any of the staff from the dispatch going to the admin? We know.
I think a few of them. I don't know if all 4 of them. All 4.
That's to be determined, but I think yes, there will be, some of the dispatchers will be moving into those positions.
Will they be stationed here? Or in West Bend?
The admin assistants will be here in Germantown.
Great. Thank you.
Trustee Pieper?
All right, I did have a couple questions for Chief Snow mostly. And probably Matt, the school resource officers, I know that the school is paying for half of their salary, correct?
Correct.
So are they paying for half of their benefits as well, or only their salary?
Have other benefits as well.
Okay, they are. So they're pretty much paying for half of the cost, including retirement fund, yada, yada.
Correct. So how that works is we bill the school district. I'm not sure if it's monthly or if it's every pay period, but we bill the school district for their half of that position.
Okay, this is more for Chief Snow. The detectives, the SRO, patrol officer, and patrol officer CPO, it says that their pay grade isn't rated because it's via contract. does that mean they aren't part of the union? Are they still union?
I hope I heard all that. So the proposed section, everyone outside of our command staff is still in the police union that is funded by police union that will go into.
Okay, is it possible to find out how their pay via contract would rate in comparison to our pay grade?
Yes.
The answer is yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and
So we
it,
can get that information?
yes, I can certainly provide that information. It might not fit as neatly into our pay grades, but I can do my best to see where they would fall on our pay grade scale.
Okay. Then, how often are uniforms purchased and what's all included in the uniforms? Are they purchased every year? Are they purchased every 3?
So the uniforms, remember our officers do not get a uniform allowance. As some of the unions do, where they get a check every year to put toward uniforms. They write when their uniforms are at such a level that they just need to be replaced. There's really no set timeline. We're not allowed to wait for more than one uniform. Except for a year, we expect them to last at least a year. Typically, officers will go anywhere from 2 to 3 years before they're ready to uniform. It's not predict. Real expense comes with new officers, even that, but I mean, all of that comes from the vets, the carriers.
Okay, so the majority of the increase in this expense is because of all the new officers we're hiring, right?
I can answer that for Chief Snow. Yes, it's largely driven by the new officers. If you do look at the 2023 actual and the 2024 actual year to date, we have come close or over that original budgeted amount. So part of that increase is also to address the needs that we've been running slightly north of that $35,000 for the last couple of years.
Then for the building utilities, what is driving the increase in that cost?
Take a look. I can answer a portion of that question too. It's a combination of We Energies bills as well as the village sewer and water bills. So over the last couple of years, We Energies did increase their rates as well as the village has also increased their water and sewer rates, specifically their water rates, and that is largely the reason that those utilities have gone up. That's where we typically budget the We Energies bills over the course of the year as well as the quarterly water and sewer bill.
What increase of $4,000? That's kind of a lot.
If you look at the 2023 actual and the 2024 year to date, you would see that those utilities are actually higher than that $38,000 amount, just based on the increases that we've seen through all utilities.
Where can I find that itemized?
I can provide a line item detail if you'd like for that budget line.
I'm sorry, it's hard to hear you. Sorry, I have to continue to mute myself on my computer so that you don't get the feedback, and then lower the volume on my phone so I can finally hear you guys online because I can't hear very well on my phone. Where can I find that itemized cost?
We can provide that, Trustee Pieper.
Matt will get it available to you.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question, the repair and maintenance of vehicles. I know we've bought a couple new squad cars over the years. is the repairs and maintenance due to the aging of our existing fleet? Do we expect that number to decrease with how many new squads we are putting on the road, or if Chief Snow could provide just a little insight to that?
Yeah, I do not anticipate that number is going to decrease. With the squad that remember the squad that we've been replacing have been almost exclusively patrol squads. We're trying to keep 2 officers per squad to keep the mileage down. At the point now where we're driving our squads to probably anywhere between 120 to 140,000 miles before we're turning them over. And we're finding right around that 100,000 mark is where we're starting to see those significant costs come from, whether it be transmission or other issues. So with a fleet that wants to get aging, it's just always in that constant stage where by the time we get 2, 3, 4 new squads, whatever it's going to be, there's a group coming up that's that number that is to a significant cost. I didn't give it.
And what would you say the average of miles is that a car reaches before it has to be replaced?
We're turning them over anywhere between 120, 124 to 140,000 miles. I know we've had some that were in excess of 140,000. That's been rare, but it does happen. Just based on who designs the vehicles, and how many vehicles we're going to get on any given year. That's one of the options we had discussed was leasing, but what we're doing now is probably 20 to 100.
Okay, so it is more cost effective to not lease and to purchase outright. Is that what you're saying?
I really don't have the answer to that. I had some discussions, but as far as when we turn them over, that's probably not going to change this year, and we're not going to see any reduction in that squad maintenance.
Okay, couldn't we maybe look into the leasing option for future years?
I can just interject and say we Public Works and the Police Department, Fire Department, Finance Department have had some conversations and been gathering some information on leasing as an option. It's not something that we have for this budget year, but we're looking at it, and I think can report back to the board in the next few months about what the results of that analysis look like.
Okay, and I don't know if this is even an option or if it has been explored, I don't know. But maybe we look into a different model of patrol or squad that is purchased that can actually get more miles on it before it needs to be retired.
And I'll tell you that those options are very limited. When you're looking at basically no one is making the sedans anymore, patrol. It's all been SUVs. Ford stopped production at one time for about a year, and that backlogged all departments. So one time they were using the Dodge, I believe, Durango. Some agencies were trying that out, and didn't. They're not saying that they were any worse than the Ford. They were improved.
Okay. I'm just doing some brainstorming here to see if, there's any other possible avenues that we could look into to find savings. But is it possible, like Chief Snow, if you're buying a new squad, is it possible to make any SUV, small SUV, sedan, anything into a squad car? Or you have to buy it as a squad?
The ones we buy are rated, the Interceptor is police rated, has been verified in pursuit conditions. There's not a lot of, I don't know of any sedans that are pursuit rated anymore. And the SUVs that are would be the Ford and the Chevy Tahoe, more than what we're paying for. So
Gotcha. And are those sent out for RFPs or no?
for squad,
Steve, would you be able to, it's cutting out on the audio on my end. Would you be able to repeat what he said?
Yeah, I'm gonna, and I'm looking back at Captain Merton too, just to confirm that I'm correct on this, but we are issuing RFPs for the squads or contacting different vendors. But it's basically talking to different vendors for the same model as squad. They're all the same model. It's just who we end up
Yeah,
purchasing
sure.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we do
But
go.
they sent out to different, how many different vendors do you know?
Captain Merton just commented that there's only 2 or 3 vendors that will provide the vehicles under the state pricing schedule that we use. So there's limited opportunities to try to compete for that. If we went out separately, not using the state contract, we'd probably end up paying significantly more than what we are.
Did we ever try to do that to see what the comparison is? And if so, when was the last time we did it?
That's something we'd have to look into a little bit further.
I can tell you that there was a previous village board president who thought that he had a better idea on how to get police cars in here, and they went with standard sedans, and they just did not hold up as well as those that are rated to be police cars, because they have enhanced suspensions, they have enhanced transmissions, and in most cases, it's the dash is set up for more than, what it would be normally. So when we had purchased some of those regular cars like that, they didn't last, and it was more of an expense than it was a savings.
Yes, but that is besides the point. That is not even what I'm going at. I understand that they need a standard of a squad and it needs to meet certain specs. I'm just saying, when was the last time we went outside of the state contract to try to get better pricing at all?
What I think the answer to that was, and what Steve provided is, without the state contract at buying by the amount of cars that they buy and the amount that we would purchase, the price would just be higher. Because you're not
But when was
buying
the
a
last
whole
time
big
we
group
looked
at
into
one
that?
time, you're only buying individuals.
I understand that, but when is the last time we even double checked that pricing?
I can say that we haven't gone outside of that since I've been in the village for 7 years. It's another option that we can take a look at. I think, as I mentioned, we are looking at the leasing option. I'm not sure if that's going to provide any savings or not, but we've been talking to a couple of different lease companies, and I think that's something that later on this year, we'll be able to report back to the board on what the results of that analysis looks like. I think that, in my opinion, that I would make that the priority as far as what we research for options. And if that doesn't work, then we can look at some other things.
That sounds good, and thank you for answering my question. So in the last 7 years, we have not checked pricing versus the state contract. We haven't checked pricing outside of it in the last 7 years, at least. So maybe it's an option to explore.
Anything else?
Steve, are you able to hear me?
I can now.
We do put requests for bids. No one's given the state that. Never do. And we do that every year. I've done it back when I was request for bids. Most agencies that they don't have the state, or most deals, they don't have the state bid, don't return them. And that's, we've always went with the state bid because no one beats them.
So I,
Could you repeat that for me, please?
Okay. And Chief Snow, I think, clarified or corrected what I had said. All of our purchases have been off of the state bid. Chief Snow indicated they have sent that information out to other vendors in the past, within the past 7 years, and the other vendors have either not responded or their prices have been higher than the state bid. So I wasn't aware the police department had done that because it just never came up with when we went through the approval process. We were always purchasing off of the state contract.
Or understandably, I know Chief Snow does a lot of work behind the scenes that none of us know about, and I appreciate that of you, Chief Snow.
Anything else, Trustee Pieper?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Comments? Motions?
I just want to highlight some of the capital projects within, excuse me, the police department budget. We will be having a separate discussion on overall capital projects that might be a better time for this. I did want to list some of the capital projects that were requested within the police department's budget, most notably the addition of 4 squad cars. But like I stated, we'll be having a separate conversation around capital projects and taking an overall look at the total amount of capital projects requested. And that's probably a more appropriate time to make changes.
Anything else for police department?
So we're gonna go over these capital projects at a later time. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Yes, the answer to that is yes. Nothing else for police department? Then we can go to fire department.
Like the other departments, you'll see the fire department levy support coming in at about $3.5 million in the 2025 recommended budget. This is a 50% increase over the 2024 original budget, almost entirely driven by the additional 10 firefighters and EMS personnel that were approved for the referendum. We're projecting revenues to remain relatively flat, a slight decrease of $5,000. Excuse me. Overall, we're seeing a slight decrease in revenues for the police department, mostly driven the intergovernmental revenue side, with slight increases across licenses and permitted public charge for service and miscellaneous revenues. Overall, the revenues are relatively flat compared to the 2024 adopted budget. On the expense side, you'll see rather large increases in salaries and wages and benefits. This is largely / entirely driven by the referendum. You'll see that salaries and wages is up to 2.4 million, with benefits coming in just under 1.2 million. In operating supplies expenses, with a slight increase of 3%. Similar to the fire department, this is due to some gas and oil, some uniform and equipment, as well as a larger increase on the workers' comp insurance side based on the new personnel. Much like the police department, we also decreased overtime by about 20,000. The fire department is not on pace to be on pace for the overtime in 2024. They've seen an abundance of calls and overtime in 2024, but the hope and the expectation is with the additional 10 personnel that we'll be within the ballpark to decrease overtime by $20,000 in the 2025 recommended budget. On the personnel side, this includes the additional 10 firefighter paramedics for a total of 22.
All 10 in 2025?
We budgeted the full on the expense side. We budgeted the full amount in 2025. Not to get too ahead, but we do have a vacancy and turnover number where we artificially deflate the total number that we'll spend on salaries and benefits. And that number is rather large compared to years past. with the expectation that we likely won't fill all positions in 2025. But as it relates to the fire department budget, all 10 positions are budgeted for.
What happens if they're not filled with the revenues left over from the referendum?
Those revenues would fall to the bottom line and be general fund surplus.
Really? Even if they came in on referendum based on adding staff to the fire department or the police department? It can be then transferred to general fund? Isn't it designated by the referendum to be for fire department personnel?
The fire department is part of the general fund. The referendum authorizes and sets the property tax levy. The village board can make a decision to set that aside in a special reserve, for example, for future pay increases for public safety. But it is, since the fire department is part of a general fund, it's not set up as a separate fund. There's no mechanism for doing that. Other than the board, making a decision, and that is something that you could do as part of this budget process, or you could wait until 2025 and see how the year goes and what those salary numbers look like. But you could designate a portion of that reserve for this particular purpose.
Which particular, for
For public safety.
Okay, I don't like the idea of transferring it to general fund, because the people that voted for the referendum, they voted for it for an increase in their public safety staffing. And then to say that we used the difference because we couldn't get enough employees in a year's time frame to cover that increase and then have it to balance our budget as a general fund. I don't agree with it. I just do it. Because that's not what it was voted to be.
We're not transferring the money to the general fund. The police and fire departments I understand. They make up the majority of the general fund.
Increase in the levy for the vote in the referendum was particularly worded for staffing within the police and fire department. And now if it's used for other things like roads or public works projects or, anything else, that isn't the purpose of why it was voted to be, in my mind.
Oh my God.
It's not being used for those types of things. It is budgeted for those positions. Now, if those positions, assuming everything is on budget and we have one less position, there's one vacant position, there'll be, $100,000 extra that will fall to the general fund reserve.
Okay. Trustee Kaminsky.
Thank you. Actually, in my opinion, back a year ago, when we had to approve, I think it was 2 positions, correct, on last year's budget. And if we go back and check a recording of the minutes, I said, I'm willing to take a gamble on funding those 2 people out of our reserve with the belief that we are going to have this referendum passed. The referendum passed. In my mind, those 2 people should be funded out of what you received in this referendum. That was the intent of the motion I made at that time, and that's exactly what I said. So that takes care of one of your positions right there. It's hired already, in my opinion. Because you actually stood before us a couple of meetings ago and said, well, we have grant money to fund these positions to get us through the year, and then that will have to become part of the general fund, and we'll have to pick up the tab. In my mind, we were never going to pick up that tab if the referendum passed. It was going to be picked up by the money that was allocated by our constituents.
Right, so
I'm just saying, in my mind, that's 2 positions that should be funded
when we
out of it.
originally went for the referendum, if you remember correctly, we had asked for 12 people.
I have no idea.
And then
Got 10.
we had 2 people that were allocated at the budget, which brought it down to 10. And then the referendum went for 10. A couple of weeks ago, I came before you and asked if we could hire 3 ahead of time using grant money that we had received to fund those positions. Those 3 are in the process of starting soon, which would leave us with the remainder for next year.
I'm just indicating what my intent was, that was never going to be two add-ons that we have to fund in our budget in the years following. I know that's not going to change, but that's exactly, if you went back and looked at the minutes, that's what I said. And in response to this conversation going on about where that money would be used, of course you'd put that in reserve for future hiring or future anything. It has to stay in the fire department. I mean, any reasonable person watching this would say, are you kidding me? Are we even having this conversation? So, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit like, this is getting to be goofy to me, some of these things. And I think I'm just being personally challenged by some of this conversation we're having tonight.
Questions? No questions? Anything to add, John?
I just really wanted to state that I kept my budget flat for the next year. And for the most part, I did add $5,000 for uniforms due to the new people coming on next year, but that was pretty much the only change that was made, with the exception of just moving some things around to make it make more sense.
Trustee Jan Miller.
And then I think you stated that, why don't you explain what you believe the overtime is going to look like for 2025 for you, John? Thanks.
So we did reduce the overtime, but we kept it very conservative due to the fact that we don't 100% know what it's going to look like next year. We have one major incident that could bring out the whole department. And the way the contracts read, that anything outside of their normal hours of operation is overtime. So if they come in after hours or when on their off time, that is overtime at a minimum of 2 hours. This year was a very difficult year. We did have a lot of injuries and a lot of expensive injuries that happened at the fire department. A couple that have required surgeries to our members. So that has taken up a significant portion of our overtime. In addition to that, we have also had a number of employees who have had children this year, and due to us not being able to decrease our staffing levels, it was paid for by overtime.
And then another concern, there were several referendums for police and fire this year in surrounding communities. How is your recruiting going?
Our recruiting has actually done very well. For our first round of applications, we received 45 applications, which is a record. We ended up bringing our top prospects to the Police and Fire Commission, who established an eligibility list of, I believe it was 9 right off the bat. And 4 of those people received offers. 3 of them accepted the offer, 1 declined, and we will be going back out for applications here shortly. We did not receive the number of paramedic applications that we needed. However, we did receive enough people who were both either firefighter EMT or firefighter advanced EMT. We just needed a few more paramedics in the application pool.
Trustee Warren.
I just want to echo my opinion also that if we don't hire this person or that person, that the money that's left over from that referendum better not get mixed in with the general fund. Because I think we followed state law, specifically wording it that way for that purpose.
Correct.
So I think that is a slippery slope to go down that road.
Just to clarify, legally, that money has to go in the general fund because the police and fire department are part of the general fund.
Well, can we though specifically say that this money though is for hiring police and fire though, not to be used for roadways or water?
It's not being used for roadways.
How do you know that though?
Because the levy for the police and fire department Now, you might be able to argue some of it might go to pay salary increases for the police and fire department this year, but the increase in the levy for police and fire, when you look at whatever new positions that they fill out of these additional 14, plus plus their pay increases and benefit increases will be significantly more than the $1.4 million in the referendum.
Trustee Jan Miller.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what a couple of the trustees have said. I would have a problem if this did not go to the fire, and there were 14 positions. So 10 for the fire, 4 for the police, and it should be allocated that way. And it should be, even though it's in a general fund, it still has a line item. Am I not correct?
You are correct. And we budgeted 4 police officers and 4 firefighters. Now, you know, if we had only budgeted 5 firefighters and 2 police officers and used those revenues somewhere else, then that would be an issue. But the budget reflects 10 firefighters and 4 police officers.
Thank you. Shouldn't be changed. Thank
Out
you.
of the 12 possible positions, you've hired 3 that will start soon. So that leaves 9 open.
Out of the 10 from the referendum, we have made offers to
But
3.
the first request was
12, which were 2 were in the budget for last year.
right.
Those 2 have been hired.
Okay. And then you've done an additional 3 or just 1?
We have offers to additional 3. And that was to be paid out of the county grant for $177,000 until the budget kicks in next year.
Right.
And just to add, you know, further explanation about why I'm as confident as I am about this is, you know, please keep in mind that last year's budget added 2 firefighters out of general fund reserves. They were 100% paid for out of general fund reserves. So what that means, and they were not included in the referendum. So in addition to adding the 10 firefighters, we had 2 more that weren't paid for out of the referendum. And in the police department, there were 2 police officers that were added, but only half of their salaries were funded. So that was 2 halves of police officers that also were not funded through the referendum, but also had to be funded in this year's budget. So that's 3 more positions that were not funded by the referendum, but are funded in this budget. So when you start to add all of that up, that's why I'm confident that, and looking at what the police department has been doing and what the fire department has been doing, I don't think we're going to have 10 positions sitting vacant for 3/4 of a year. I think the positions are going to be filled pretty rapidly. And that money's not going to be sitting there. Again, it's something we can report back and we can check with the board and show how that money is being spent. And if the money from the referendum is not spent on police and fire entirely during 2025, the board can segregate or restrict the use of that portion of the general fund reserves for that purpose. But I just want to say, when we say, well, it shouldn't go to the general fund, it by law has to go to the general fund. And that's where the money would go. The board has the authority to restrict the use of it, but it will go to the general fund.
What is your confidence, John, that you'll fill all 7 open positions by the end of the year?
I feel
2025.
By end of 2025, I feel very confident we will.
Okay. Other questions? No other questions? All right, thank you, John. All right, that takes care of all 3 items on tonight's budget review. Our next meeting is tomorrow, October 1st. The time is immediately following the Public Works and Highway Committee. At this time, we can be adjourned. Thank you all for coming, and thank you all for watching. Have a good night.